Hello and welcome to the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you are listening to episode number 64, brought to you by Wicked Tree Gear. Today is the fourth and final part of the Archery DIY Report with Greg Litzinger, and we're covering bow tuning and setups. I'm also announcing this week's winner of the Trophy Ridge React Sight giveaway and how to get involved to win some cool prizes during Exodus's Velvet Fest celebration. So stay tuned. All right, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. I hope everyone had a good Memorial Day holiday weekend, got to enjoy some time outside, maybe eat a little barbecue, maybe even snuck in just a little bit of deer work. This past weekend, I had the great pleasure and honor, actually, to go to Annapolis and attend the Naval Academy graduation. Some close friends of my wife and I, their son was graduating this year from the Naval Academy. So got to spend the weekend there, and man, that is a super cool experience. Everything from, tailgating in the parking lot before you go in, to watching all those, young men and women, taking their oath, getting ready to go serve their country. The Blue Angel flyover, of course, the president was there and spoke, which was cool. I don't know that I'll ever, in my lifetime get to see another president speak. So that was super cool. If you ever have the opportunity to kind of check that out, it's something to really behold, and I highly urge you to take advantage of that, man. It's a bunch of class act people, and great bunch of young men and women. But let's go ahead and just cut to the chase here. I know the past 2 weeks we had been running the Trophy Ridge React Sight giveaway, and we have done the drawing for the winner. So I will give a drum roll. And the winner of the Trophy Ridge React Sight is Galen Swigart, I believe. So Galen, you are the winner of the sight. I'll reach out to you on Instagram. I'll send you a direct message, and we'll get your address and get that mailed out to you as soon as possible. Hopefully you can put that to good use this year and knock down a slob with it, man. So congratulations to you, and I'll get in touch. Also, I want to make mention of another giveaway that's happening, not necessarily with, from the Truth from the Stand, but with one of our partners, actually with a handful of our partners. Exodus is running their celebration of Velvet Fest, which they've done. I believe this might be the second or third year that they've done it. And there are some awesome prizes that they're giving away over the course of the next eight weeks. So they're giving away thousands of dollars in prizes over the course of the next 8 weeks, and they have a grand prize drawing on August 10th, which is going to be a slew of products that they're going to give away. You'll have a chance to win prizes from Exodus Outdoor Gear, Wicked Tree Gear, Glacier Coolers, Onyx. I believe Bronco Box is in there as well. So a bunch of really cool products. And all you have to do to get entered in the weekly drawings, because they're going to give away some products every week leading up to the grand prize giveaway, is all you need to do is post a photo or video on social media using the hashtag VelvetFest, and you will be automatically entered into those weekly drawings and then into obviously the grand prize drawing as well. If you'd like to see a list of all the prizes and so forth, and maybe get a little bit more information about it, you can see a list of the prizes and draw dates and what is going to be included in each of those draw dates in terms of prizes. All you need to do is head over to ExodusOutdoorGear.com and go to their blog page. There's a really cool video that they put together, kind of outlining what the celebration is all about. And have a list of all the prizes and, of course, the dates that they're going to be giving away specific prizes. So go ahead over to Exodus Outdoor Gear, check out the blog page, and check out all that information. And I thought, at this moment, or at this time, it would be maybe appropriate if I kind of gave my thoughts and perspective on Velvet Fest. I think for me, it's interesting because we all get geeked out over the rut, right? And over, late October, early November. In terms of that's when we're going to hit the timber and get to spend some time in the woods, and that's the kind of time of year where anything can happen. But for me, I get almost as excited, or probably as excited, for pulling cards in early summer and watching the development of the bucks that might be on a property that I'm either hunting, whether it's public land or whether it's the property, the couple farms that I hunt that are family properties, and watching the deer develop through the course of the year. I think. For me, Velvet Fest is just this, prelude to this time of year that we all love. And it's full of hope, right? Because anything is possible this time of year when you're pulling these cards and you're seeing these bucks, and you just kind of get excited, and it's really kind of kicks off deer season officially for me. Like this past weekend, the Memorial Day weekend, is what really kind of I start to turn the page, and full attention then kind of goes toward deer season and preparing for archery season. I'm really looking forward. I haven't had a chance to do a card pull yet. I got a bunch of the Exodus trail cameras hung. I leave most of mine out, damn near all year round. And so I'm looking forward to doing my first pull this summer here, hopefully next weekend. I'll be headed out to the Total Archery Challenge shoot, and it's kind of a nice on the way. Both of the family properties are on the way to that shoot. So I'll make a stop in there, pull the cards. And there's just a lot of hope and anticipation. There's a couple deer from last year that were on both properties that I'm really kind of hoping that they make an appearance this year. I'm hoping I get to watch them grow through the Velvet Fest season, and it always just kind of, there's always this excitement anytime you go to pull a camera card this time of year, because you just don't know what's going to be there. Is there going to be a new deer that you've not seen? Is there going to be that hammer that you watched all last year that maybe hasn't been using your property as his main core area, but as he gets older and maybe a more mature buck has been taken off of your property, and that bedding area now is open for the next dominant deer, so it's like, is there a new guy coming into town that's going to be a homebody? So there's all those things that kind of happen during Velvet Fest, and in celebration of all those things, Exodus has put together this great celebration, all these great giveaways with a bunch of the partners that help make this podcast possible. So it's really cool that they do that. So be sure to take advantage of that. Head over to ExodusOutdoorGear.com, check out their blog page, check out all the information related to the giveaway, and then make sure to stay tuned to their social channels to see when they're giving things away, and stay up to date on what products are being given away and when. So without further ado, we've got part number 4 here with Greg Litzinger talking about bow tuning and setups. The last part of this series, it's been awesome having Greg on and doing this DIY report, this mini series with him. Of course, he's a good friend of mine and a great archer, great hunter, and I just enjoy spending time with him. I hope you guys have enjoyed the series. And we'll hopefully have Greg on soon again to talk more deer hunting related stuff as we get into the fall. But before we jump into all of that, let's take a quick second to talk about our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. First and foremost, this podcast is brought to you by Wicked Tree Gear, the longest lasting, fastest cutting, toughest tree trimming equipment you've ever used. Simply put, the toughest saws on earth. How tough are they? Tough enough to come with a lifetime warranty. Right now, when you visit wickedtreegear.com, use the promo code TRUTH at checkout and get a 20% discount on your Wicked purchase. This podcast is also brought to you by Exodus Outdoor Gear. The new Exodus Trek is a byproduct of all consumer voices who have been excited about what Exodus trail cameras have to offer, but just can't fit a $200 camera in their budget, and that's all right. A budget-friendly camera backed by the industry's leading warranty is now here. The Trek comes in at $145, has the same proprietary shell design as the Lift Series camera, same 5-year warranty and unmatched customer service, 0.7 second trigger speed, photo, video, time-lapse, and hybrid modes that we've all come to love. Also, all with a single-line backlit LED display for easy setup. And you get approximately 20,000 images on a set of lithium batteries, which is also key this time of year for Velvet Fest. If you'd like to learn more about Exodus trail cameras, check them out at ExodusOutdoorGear.com, or you can hit the partner link at www.truthfromthestand.com. And if you like what you see, save yourself $20. Use the promo code TRUTH at checkout. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and get the bow hunting fiend on the line. All right, we are back live and in color.
Yeah.
For part number, what part is this? Part
47.
Number 4. I think it's part 4. With the bow hunting fiend Greg Litzinger talking some more archery technique and archery form. And today what we're talking about is tuning. It's one of those things where I'm going to be completely honest that I know nothing about. I rely on friends like you, a buddy of mine, Ryan Clapper, back in Bedford, to do my tuning, and then Bob and AJ's out here in Pipersville in Pennsylvania to do my bow setups and stuff. Because for one, I don't have a press, and that's for good reason, because I'll probably F up my bow pretty good if I have a press.
Maybe that warranty.
There, yeah, exactly. There, it would definitely go. So I don't trust myself to do anything. But it's one of those things that I want to learn to do, and I'm always kind of interested in tuning. And you saved my ass whenever I screwed up my bow last year and took it home and got it at least back in working order to get me pointed in the right direction.
Shot better than before.
Totally did. Yeah. It's like I was lights out with that thing after I got it back from you. But yeah, so today we're talking tuning, man. So I guess from a high level, let's just kind of walk through like the basic steps of tuning a bow. And let's go from the perspective of when you worked in the pro shop and someone would come in to get their bow tuned. Because there's a lot of different things you can do that's specific to the shooter, right?
Correct.
But if you want to get a bow that's shooting well, that someone can shoot, be accurate with, and hunt with, and then from there, they can, as they get maybe more into archery and they want to get more specific about gear and setup and stuff like that, you can then start to tweak some of the finer things for them. So let's take this from the perspective that someone bought a new bow, they're into hunting, they're going to go to the archery range, and they just need a bow that's going to shoot well for them once they leave your shop.
All right. So the bow's set up for them, the draw link's good, peep, all that stuff is set.
All the stuff we talked about earlier in the series.
So I shoot through paper pretty much mainly to set my knock height. And let me actually backtrack here for a second. I set the rest as per spec from the bow manufacturer. They all have different ways to set their rest or different measurements off the riser. What I do is I take an arrow, I cut down, I put it on the inside of the riser where their burger button holes are, and so it's level and it goes down the length of like the arrow's knocked, and then I set the rest as per spec to the manufacturer, whatever they might be, and I look at how it's going to be. And a lot of times they're off; they're not completely level because the yokes might need a little tweaking or the cam shimming, but for the most part, I just want to get an idea of how the arrow looks as per spec from the manufacturer. And then I take it to paper and I shoot through paper, and I'm not worried about left to rights. I'm just worried about up and downs. That's your knock height. And if I'll make adjustments either to the D loop or to the rest to get a good shot through paper. And I shoot from probably 6 foot. I don't shoot super close, but like 6 foot's good enough. And then once I get the knock up and down pretty much spot on, I do what's called French tuning. It's where you shoot 3 foot at a target from 3 foot away, and you pretty much use your sights to get your point of impact. You don't touch the rest or anything. So once you get a half dozen arrows, hitting the same dot at 3 foot, same hole, go back to say 10 foot, 15 foot, whatever. I use probably 15, 20 feet. That's what I got in my house. And then I shoot. And I shoot to see what the arrow's doing at that distance. A lot of times you got to bump the rest in or out to get the arrow to hit. You do that a few times so you're hitting the same spot. Then you go back up to 3 foot. You shoot, you bump the rest or the sight. You go back to 15 foot, bump the rest. And what you're doing, setting the sight and the rest in line with one another and somewhat the arrow. So your point of impact is the same at 3 foot and 15 foot. Then you go back to 10 or 15 yards and start setting your pins. And at that distance, you use your sight a little bit, and then you kind of just keep going back and forth. And what you're trying to do is make sure your sight and rests are staying equal to one another at that distance, whatever distance you're shooting. And like I said, most indoor ranges is 20 yards. So there's really not much you can do after your 20-yard pin is set.
Right.
Then you go back to, say, out to the range, you got your 20, 30, 40. I'm a little extreme. Most people go to 30. I'll go to 40, and I'll aim at the high spot on a target with my 20, and I'll shoot. And if your bow is set up well, sight, rest, arrow combinations right, the arrow should just fall straight down. If it starts falling to the left and to the right, you gotta make some rest adjustments,
Right.
And then once you make the rest adjustments, you're gonna have to go back 20 yards and make some sight adjustments.
Right.
So the French tuning is a quick way to get get a customer out of the door, and where they're going to shoot well enough and have confidence in their setup and not badmouth you.
Right.
But anything after 20, it's really user specific.
Right.
And then you go, at 40, and then I jump back to 60 and do the same thing. I'm at a real high spot, on the target with my 20. If 40 shot good, then hopefully 60 is just going to be just low.
Right.
And you make some adjustments. And that's a quick way of getting your arrows to tune to the bow sight and get everything kind of set up.
Right.
And there's a lot more advanced level tuning techniques.
Right.
And different methods to achieve that.
So what about when you go to throw broadheads on, right? Because I'll hear a lot of guys say that, they'll put broadheads on and they'll have to, get their bow tuned like for their broadheads or whatever. I've personally never experienced that. Like I've been able to put broadheads on my setup and shoot broadheads. Last year I was shooting out to 70 yards, getting ready for that elk hunt. And I threw some broadheads on and shot out to 70 yards, and my broadheads were landing right by where my field points were landing. The only difference was the shooter was me. You know what I mean? But I was within the realm of acceptable.
Yes.
Out to that distance. So how do you tune a bow to make sure that, or give yourself the best chance to not have to make a lot of drastic changes when you're changing from field points to broadheads?
When it comes to broadheads, we never really touched on arrow selection, but arrow selection is critical for a good flight of any arrow with a field tip. You can pretty much get the fly well.
Right.
There's nothing in the front steering the arrow. It's it's pretty much streamlined. Once you put, say, a fixed blade on the front of a broadhead, now you're adding, a lot of, I don't even know
aerodynamic kind of impact.
Yeah,
right.
To the arrow. Now the front could possibly steer because you got giant blades on the front.
Right.
So if the arrow's not set up properly to your bow, it can make tuning a nightmare. And people want to blame the broadhead. The broadheads stink. The broadheads suck. They're terrible. They don't fly well. I'm sure they fly well.
Right.
Let's be realistic. Something else is not right on the bow. It's not the broadhead's fault. Well, once I go to this model, it flies a lot better. Well, it's a smaller profile, smaller diameter, so it's less. It cuts to the wind a lot better.
Right.
And I do believe that's why a lot of people shoot expandables is
they don't want to mess with it. Right.
It's simple.
Is there a way to tune a bow to kind of get you into a place with a fixed head to where those challenges are?
For me, I'll take it to a little. The basic tuning that we did, and do pretty much the same thing with the walk back tuning, broadhead tuning, slash French tuning. Same thing with the broadheads. Go up to 20 and shoot, or go up to 10 yards and shoot. And if you're shooting left to right, maybe bump your sight to get to your point of impact, then go back to 20 and shoot. And it should pretty much be there. If not, just tap the rest a little bit. And when I say a little bit, I mean like
blow on it.
Yeah, like 30 seconds of an inch is a lot when you're walk back tuning, and then go back to 10, make sure it's good, and then go back to, 40 yards and shoot. Right. Now, if the arrow combination, broadhead combination, if it's a good setup, you should technically be within your realm of acceptable. And a lot of people, listen, let's be realistic. Broadheads, fixed blades can be a bear to tune sometimes. Right. There's a lot going on. Most people, they can shoot, softball sized groups at 30. Well, they go put broadheads on there trying to shoot 50. Well, you don't really shoot 50.
Right.
Like, let's be realistic, let's be honest with yourself. Yeah. Like, all right, if my max range is 30, 40, then make that your broadhead thing. Like, don't try and get something out of that you can't get, with a field tip out of your arrow setup. But pretty much, shoot at 10 and go back to 30 and do that walk back tuning. And if your arrow's, flying a little bit to the left, bump your rest, arrows flying a little right, bump your rest. But go back to, 40, 50 yards. And it does change your tune a little bit with the field points, but you're hunting. Right. So this is for the average, consumer, guys and girls that don't want to spend hours upon hours tuning. So I don't really shoot with field. Like after I put my broadheads on and I get my bow shooting off, I put field tips on, I'm a little bit to the left. Oh well.
I just deal with it.
Yeah. You know.
And just know that your bow is shooting a little bit to the left. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And like I said, I'm not going to enter a tournament during hunt season. And I shoot 1 arrow at a time during hunting season. I'll try to shoot every day. I got 3 targets in my yard, and I'll rifle off 1 arrow. Right. And that's it. Cause it's just like hunting scenario. Right. So, Then there's like more advanced level tuning.
Right. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about barrel shaft tuning, because I know it's something that you do.
Yeah.
Is that you're a big proponent of. It's like you're I guess a fan of barrel shaft tuning.
The reason I got into barrel shaft tuning is I'm trying to tune the bow for forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And by forgiveness, I mean, when I was competing, stress comes into play, adrenaline, all that stuff. So I got into barrel shaft tuning from reading about it. Like target guys got into it, and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
I can torque the bow a little bit and still make a good shot. So I'm like, well, this probably work great for hunting.
Right.
So I built an arrow spine tester, and I actually spine test my arrows, all my arrows, and I fletch them all the same. So the arrows pretty much all behave the same coming off the bow.
Right.
And with barrel shaft tuning, I mean, I shoot a new breed, so it's pretty much about cam shimming the cam left to right. But I shoot through paper, get my knock height set, and then I put the paper away, and I shoot a hard foam target at 10 yards, and then I shoot a hard foam target, same target, at 20 yards, and I look at the point of impact in the foam.
Mm-hmm.
If the bow's tuned, the arrow is tuned, left, right, the arrow should be straight into the target.
Right.
And then I'll take a fletched arrow, and shoot right next to it, and they should be, hitting side by side.
Right.
In the same angle going into the target, and I make sure the targets are your shoulder level, like I'm not changing anything.
Right.
And I do it at 20 yards. I've done it at 30 and 40, but for me, it's not necessary. I'm not at that type of elite level shooter where I'm shooting lifesavers at 70 yards.
Right.
And so I make adjustments. So if the arrow's kicking to the left or to the right, I shim the cam over to get perfect alignment with my barrel shaft, hitting straight into the foam.
Right.
And sometimes, that's my phone, by the way. That's my phone. But I'm trying to get, like I said, the barrel shaft to fly straight, and then the flets to fly straight right next to it. So if I put a little leaf up or a little orange dot, I should be able to hit that orange dot with my fletch arrow, and then I should be able to put a barrel shaft in the same hole.
Right.
And that's a well-tuned bow.
Right.
And now when it comes to hunting, I put a fixed blade on. I shoot a pretty big fixed blade. Not necessarily huge, but it's got a big profile on it. It's a RAD rival, so it's got there's a lot in front of that broadhead. But I like a big cut, so since I've started barrel shaft tuning, I can screw those broadheads on, or any broadheads for that matter, and shoot
and be good.
Yeah, very little tweaking of anything. And when I barrel shaft tune, I make sure the rest is perfectly centered as per specs from the manufacturer. The arrow going through the top of the 3/4 way to burgle hole, and I lay an arrow on the inside of the riser we talked about earlier, and I put the arrow in the rest, and they're level. They're straight on down, and I shim the cams as necessary to get to that where it needs to be. And a lot of times that's all I need to do, and it makes tuning for forgiveness. So windy conditions or anything, or me shooting off centered, or just a little bit,
a little bit of torque or whatever, right?
It pretty much can eliminate a fixed blade shooting 6 inches to the left. I might shoot 3 inches. Well, you know what? That's still a kill, and I'm still happy with that. Right.
What about, you mentioned choosing the right arrow for the bow. I think a lot of people just kind of go out and pick up arrows, right, and don't think much about what they're putting in their bow and how it's going to react. Let's talk a little bit about like selecting an arrow, and then of course front of center is something that you hear. I don't think you heard as much about it like a handful of years ago, maybe. I've heard a lot more about it probably in the past like 2 to 3 years, where it's become more of a talking point for archers, even hunting archers. Like I think it was probably always a thing with competitive archers, but I now hear more and more about it in hunting scenarios than I had in the past. And that might just be me not paying attention, but let's talk a little bit about arrow selection and then front of center, and like how important that arrow weight is overall, and how much FOC you should have in an arrow.
Before we continue our conversation, let's talk about Wicked Tree Gear saws. Hardcore deer hunters need hardcore tools. Do yourself a favor and check out Wicked Tree Gear, the toughest hand saws and pull saws on earth. You buy it once, you buy it for life, backed by a lifetime guarantee. Right now, if you use the promo code TRUTH, you'll save 20% on your next purchase with free ground shipping. So head over to wickedtreegear.com and get a saw that's tough enough to work as hard as you hunt.
It's like I said, and it's so subjective. 'Cause
Right.
I've had arrows with horrible forward center, fly with fixed blades and expandables, great, up 30, 40, 50 yards. And I've had arrows with heavy forward center, I think 19 and a half is what I had last year. And they flew great, I mean, last year I was shooting 90 yards at a small 3D deer target. And, 4 out of 5 arrows, I was getting in the lungs at 93 yards, which is crazy.
Right.
And granted, I built a heavy forward center, but was it my technique or was it, the heavy forward center that allowed me? Because I never really shot that distance with broadheads before. So it's like, I can't really say whether it's the forward center or was it me or the perfect setup on the bow. So,
or the combination of all three.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, when it comes to arrow selection, a lot of people they're driven by what's popular, what they're seeing on TV, what they're seeing in magazines,
right.
or what the shop has, what the shop's pushing. And one arrow isn't necessarily better than the other. There's Carbon Express, Easton, Beeman. They're all going to do the same thing.
Right.
They're all well within tolerances for the average shooter. They can take a .006 arrow, shoot it extremely well, and they put a .001, $120, $130 a dozen arrow, and shoot the same.
Right.
So
right.
Good arrows are nice. I mean, in my target bows, I can tell the difference in straightness of arrows.
Right.
But and I'm saying eighth of an inch, but that's big in target archery. Hunting, not that important.
Right.
Eighth of an inch is still a dead deer.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So a good arrow combination to the bow, it takes a little tweaking, but now there's a lot of computer software programs that, if any shop is not using them computer software programs for their customers, they're doing them a disservice.
Right.
I bought, when I worked at my first shop, I actually bought software and I'd bring my own laptop in because the owner didn't want to. I'm not buying this. We don't need that. I'm like, well, I'll buy it. And he would set up a bow, this is the arrow you need. And then I run it through the program. He'd be way under spine, wrong things, because these arrow programs allow you to build the perfect arrow. They take into consideration how efficient the bow is. Some arrows are a lot better quality than others.
Right.
So why not use that software? It's like $30, $40. The average, listener can buy it, on target, Archer's Advantage.
Right.
It works.
Right. So what's the importance of front of center? So really it's like the important thing for an arrow for a hunter, is that you want to make sure that your arrow's spined correctly for the efficiency of your bow, the amount of weight you're going to be pulling and those types of things. You don't want an arrow that's underspined and flexing too much, and by the same token, you don't want one that's overspined and not flexing enough coming off your bow. So you want a nice kind of happy medium. What about front of center? Like what does that do for you?
You want your arrow to be a little bit top or front heavy. You don't want it to be rear heavy, because then you're kind of pushing the arrow. I guess a good way to say is, if you're front heavy, you're pulling through the air. It's a lot easier to pull something, I guess, with efficiency than it is to push something.
Right.
When you're pushing from the back of the bow, imagine a rear wheel drive car burn out side by side.
Right.
Versus a front wheel drive car, you punch it, it pretty much kind of goes straight. It's a good way to, I always thought about it.
The one way that someone explained it to me was that you have two drivers on a fire truck. Say the driver in the front seat has a heart attack.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And the guy in the back has to drive. Who do you think can drive more accurately? Or who's going to have to work harder?
Exactly.
So your bow and your setup has to work a lot harder if all of your steering, if all of your driving of your arrows is happening from the back.
True.
You know what I mean? That was kind of how he described it.
Fletching's got to work twice as hard. There's a lot of variable. Wind can come into play. It's a heavy rear arrows or light arrows, pretty much. In essence, the front end's real light. So it can be affected by wind drift and gust of wind. Where if you're real heavy in the front, you're pulling the arrow to the target. Is a way an old timer that shot a lot of field archery. Right. They shot relatively heavy forward center arrows to help pull that arrow to the target. And these are all recurve shooters, which is real forward centers. Yes.
Yeah, super important for them.
Because, they're shooting off the shelves and stuff like that. Where compounds, it's important, but it's not as important.
It ups your game.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I guess what is like how much, what's the percentage of forward center that you should shoot for?
They say 10% is minimum with broadheads. You know, it depends on who's writing the article too. I've read them, you know, from 8%, 10, 12, but I don't shoot anything pretty much under 12, you know, 11 and a half. I've had good success with. When I started getting into, you know, the 9, you're getting in a danger zone with fixed blades. Expandables, you can get away with it, you know, because front end's really not doing much, you know, steering wise. But 10, 12 is good, 15 is good, you know.
Yeah,
and it's the heavier too. With a lot of people realize the heavier front, the more weight you have up front, the heavier your arrow has to be in general. You see, if you want to run 200 grains up front, you're going to have to get a heavier arrow to combat the flexing. So now you got a significantly heavier arrow. So your drop is going to be a lot more at distance than it would be, you know, with a, you know, an arrow that's, let's say 12% forward center. So it'll be a little bit lighter arrow.
And not to get into like all kinds of craziness, but I was talking to a guy who owns a shop. It's Bob, one of the owners at Bob at AJ's out in Pipersville. We were talking. I went to pick up my bow. He set up my newest bow. He set up my Obsession, and we were just kind of talking about, you know, bow setups and stuff like that. And we were talking a little bit about front of center. And one of the things we started talking about was shooting a heavy arrow versus a light arrow, right? And we were talking about speed bows a little bit and stuff like that. And, you know, the thing is, I think that people get confused with is that, you know, they equate speed to kinetic energy, which it does play a part, right? But his point is that, you know, the important part is the weight combination with the right amount of speed that gives you the momentum. Because the momentum is really what's going to help you downrange. He's like, because your bow, if you're shooting, you have a 30-inch draw or whatever, and you're pulling 70 pounds, and your bow at that, you know, at that setup IBO is at 345 or 350 or whatever, 30 yards downrange, you're still not going 345 feet per second or 350 feet per second. Like it's that's what's coming out at the bow for a certain distance, right? But when you get to a certain point, you're now talking about momentum. So how much momentum does that arrow have based on the speed that it had coming out and the amount of weight that it's pushing? So in some instances, you're better off shooting a heavier arrow with less poundage and getting, you know, good momentum, right, with a heavier arrow, or shooting slower because you got a heavier arrow to give you more momentum down range. And it's going to absorb the shock better from your bow, which means your bow is going to be quieter. And it's going to be a more stable arrow as it flies in flight, and it's going to be more accurate downrange.
And that's where I said those computer programs earlier, they will show you how much momentum you have at 60, 70. Like I built my elk arrow pretty much on that premise of shooting 70 yards. I forget what number I had in my head. I don't even know why I had it. I'm talking to somebody, and they're like, do you want this type of momentum for like a 70-yard shot? Because I was prepared to take a 70, 80-yard shot in an elk. You must believe that. Cow, calf, bull, it didn't matter. If I had one at 70, 80 yards, I'm crushing it. And I wanted penetration. So I pretty much built my arrows with 480 grains, 490 grains. It was really light arrow shaft, but a lot of weight up front. But also had a lot of weight in the back, you know, wraps and vanes and stuff like that. So it wasn't too off-centered, but it was really heavy. So if I hit something at bone at 70 yards, you know, I'm going to get that extra inch or two of penetration, you know, to get you know, help with some blood flow. But get back to the arrow weight. I always told customers, do you want to get hit by Mike Tyson, you know, or do you want to get hit by Floyd Mayweather?
I'd rather get hit by Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah, precisely. You know, so when it comes to arrow selection, you got to take that into consideration. You know, Ricky, double lunger, he shoots 375 grain arrow, but he's a hell of a shot, and he can put the arrow where it needs to be. His arrows are light, fast, and he shoots, you know, 20, 30 yards max. And his deer die within sight. You know, that's fine.
And like this year, 2 of them do.
Yeah.
That son of
10 does. You know, but they all die, you know, very fast because he knows he's a good shot with the bow. You know, guys that are a little iffy, I always make them go heavy. You know, because, you know, you might flank a deer or whatever, or off-center deer, you know, but that little extra weight might give you an exit hole on a shot that you wouldn't have got it before. And I know, speaking from experience as a kid, when I was, you know, 14, I could 35 pounds. I shot light arrows. I got terrible penetration. And, you know, I hit my growth spurt at 16. One of my growth spurts at 16. I shot a 540 grain arrow. Had a Thunderhead 160 on it. You know, crazy. 25-14. It was a cannon of an arrow. I literally knocked deer off their feet. Jeez. I mean, I've literally knocked them right over. Because, you know, but my buddy Rick, my other kid I grew up with, he thought I hit a tree once. And it's how, because I broke both shoulder scapulas going through. And pretty much that deer kicked twice and was like, I'm just going to... and was
not
dead.
a gas.
Yeah, right. I mean, it literally felt like, it sounded like a baseball bat, like cracking a tree, snapping in half.
Nice.
But that comes with weight. But with weight, there's
a trade-off.
Trade-off. And I have another story with weight. Kentucky. I misjudged a deer, heavy arrow, shot right into it, giant 10-pointer.
Really?
Yep. I'm like, it's
so
38.
Weight did you good once and then did you dirty another time.
So I went light, and then light cost me the biggest deer I've ever seen in New Jersey. I shot straight down, and it didn't have enough power, pretty much. The arrow just skirted down, didn't break the scapula for some strange reason. To this day, I don't know how. And pretty much just break down the side of it, and the deer got away. But I'm like, if I would have had, a 450 grain arrow instead of 330 grain arrow, that deer would have been dead.
Right.
So
you live and you learn.
Yep.
Well, hopefully, folks during this mini series have learned a lot. I have. I always like to talk about tuning bows. It's something that's foreign to me a little bit, So it's one of those things where I like to understand more about what's going on with my bow. I feel like if I understand more about what's going on with my bow, my technique and stuff like that, I'm going to be a better shot. So hopefully everyone out there got a little bit of information that they didn't have before, and hopefully it helps them become a better shot, a better archer, a better hunter, and stay away from the lewds.
Yeah, man. But just a disclaimer, just all personal stuff. Nothing's science. There's no science-based results.
Right.
This is just my own observations on doing
it for years and setting bows up and tuning bows.
I've done it right. I've done it wrong, and I still make mistakes. So.
Right.
Listeners might listen to this, but like, that guy's full of shit. And I'm like, there's a good possibility on some of the things, but
right. So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and hit the range and put some of these things to the test, man. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it, buddy. Thumbs up again.
Thumbs up,
yeah. Keep giving everyone thumbs up.
Yeah.
Nobody can see it. It's awesome. Thanks for listening, guys. All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. We'd like to thank Greg for joining. Be sure to give him a follow on Instagram if you are not already following him. We'd, of course, like to thank all of you for listening. We certainly appreciate you guys tuning in and letting us talk deer hunting, archery, and any of the weird topics that we happen to get into during the course of our conversations. And just want to say that we appreciate the hell out of all you for tuning in. And if you haven't yet, head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast so we make sure to deliver each of the upcoming podcasts directly to your mobile devices. Before we shut this thing down, we need to give a big shout out to our partners that continue to help us make this podcast possible. Wicked Tree Gear, Exodus Outdoor Gear, Trophy Ridge, Ozonics, Obsession Bows, Tecumani Seed, Glacier Coolers, Ramcat Broadheads, and Trophy Taker Rests. And until next time, we'll see y'all.
A long time coming, if it all. It takes a special knowing to colorful. Damaged heads, broken letters. Rationalize yourself in numbers, but I